Let's see if all the people who applauded Erica's eulogy, who stood and cheered, can practice what she applied to a much more difficult circumstance. Let's see if this moment can be more than just another step down the road to more division. Now, we need our better minds more than ever. The man I'm bringing on, I've been chasing to have on for a while, and I'm very happy it's tonight. Now, do we agree on everything? No. On most things? I don't know. I don't care. I respect his mind and his experience. Conservative author, journalist, political commentator, Mr. Douglas Murray. Douglas, thank you for taking the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Great pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
What is your perspective on where America is on the state of its political play?
Well, as you mentioned in your intro, I mean, it's an extremely dangerous moment because everyone has spoken about the division in our politics here in America for many years. That division isn't new, but as you also mentioned, it's been exacerbated by the world of social media. And it's led to a situation that I've described for many years, which is that we no longer disagree about our interpretation of events. We actually disagree now about the facts. The case of Jimmy Kimmel, which should be a sort of totally frivolous, unimportant, social media asterisk to all of this, it does actually have one thing it could have, which could be important, which is what if Mr. Kimmel took the opportunity to say, I was wrong. I put out a claim about the assassin of Charlie Kirk and his motives, which was not true. And I regret that because although I'm in the business of comedy, I still shouldn't put out false information and spew false facts. Why would that be important? Because if you look at the polling in America in the last couple of days of what Democrats and Republicans think about the motives of the alleged shooter of Charlie, you'll see that a large proportion of leftists do believe that the gunman was some MAGA Republican, and Republican voters have read the text exchanges that will obviously come up in the court case as well, and I think understandably concluded what those texts suggest, which is that the assassin acted in the appalling way he did because he was motivated by a form of far-left political extremism. Now, there's a sort of grown-up way of approaching that, which would be to say, can we accept in America, as in any society, that political violence can come from any side? That would be just the obvious thing to do. But the harder thing to do is to say, what happens if it comes from my political side? Can I face up to that? And that speaks to the Kimmel problem. The problem with Kimmel is he's fed into this thing of, no, I'm not willing to accept it. If I'm a leftist, I'm not willing to accept it, and I'll have my own different facts. And in that meeting place, between what used to be different opinions and now having different facts, if we allow that second one to continue, there's just no way to find any form of reconciliation.
So I believe that, look, I think what Jimmy got tripped up on here wasn't so much that, this was a MAGA guy, but that he was making a comment about how he thought the right was manipulating this after the fact. But it doesn't matter how we got here. What matters is what you do with it. And we'll see his answer tomorrow night. I was very happy that you said yes to come on tonight because of what I heard from Tucker at the memorial. And he just openly basically wants to say that forget about this punk with the gun. Look at Israel. And there is a malignancy that is going on in our society. And I don't believe that Israel is anything more than opportunistic for it, to be honest. I think they get confused with being the white oppressor for some on the far left, that when people look at Israel, they think it's like they think it's Goliath instead of David. But when you hear that said, and it almost goes by without mention that Tucker's at a memorial being watched by millions of people and just trashes the idea that Israel may have had something to do with this. And Charlie Kirk was aware of that, which I don't think squares with his real opinion, by the way. What did you make of that?
Well, I thought it was less important what Carlson said at the memorial than what he said in the days after. You mentioned earlier Steve Bannon's claim that the
Hmm.
messages and the shooter were somehow fake. That I don't know how somebody like Bannon has decided to come to that conclusion. I didn't know he had, but I had noticed Tucker Carlson and others in the aftermath of the murder of Charlie Kirk doing this kind of, someone else must have been involved. They ordered it. Who is they? And then before you know it, there's that slippery thing that, again, I mean, right and left can do. On this occasion, it's some figures from the right who say, I'm just asking questions, but Israel has something to answer for. That is, I mean, that is just the most basic, low resolution, conspiracy theory minded pap you can ever get into. It's worth saying again, as with the thing of political violence, something like the oldest hatred of anti-Semitism can come from the political left. In recent years, it has mainly come from the political left, I would say, from demonstrators at campuses across America thinking that they're defending the rights of Palestinians and chasing Jews across campus in 21st century America, screaming, "Go back to Poland." Okay, that's just overt anti-Semitism on the political left, and it is a major failing of the political left in America that it does not distance itself more from that eruption, because, of course, they think only the right can be bigots, only the right can be racists, only the right can be anti-Semites. In the case of people using the murder of Charlie Kirk and spinning it into this conspiracy, I'm afraid it plays to the same base instincts and conspiracies and much more. And by the way, as I mentioned in the New York Post the other day, there's two particularly interesting aspects to that. There's a question underneath the motives of the people trying to spin that. The first one is notice that although Charlie Kirk said many critical things in his life, and I think rightly, certainly had the right to do so, about Islamic
Sure.
fundamentalism, about some of the fundamentals of Islam. Weirdly, none of these figures on the sort of conspiratorial right in America have claimed that it was the Muslims who did it. That's quite interesting because it's always interesting to see which conspiracy theory people are going to fall into.
Hmm.
But the second thing that's
Oh,
much more striking to me is this, if I can say so quickly, which is
please.
imagine how strange it is that, again, I mean, the trial is forthcoming of the alleged assassin, but imagine how strange it is that people on the political right in America who have warned in recent years about the transgender movement, who've warned about handing out cross-sex hormones, which have a major effect on people's brains and as well as on their physique and much more. Imagine the people who've warned about that, who've been saying for years, look, there are two sexes. And anyone who claims there's a million different genders, this is just weird, crazy, cuckoo stuff, and we've got to wake people up to it. Imagine for those people, you actually have an alleged shooter whose partner appears to have been transitioning and who texts to his partner after the shooting, we can't, there's no negotiation with some type of hate. And Charlie is shot in the throat whilst answering a question about transgender shooters. What more I don't want to say perfect, but what more sort of useful in a way thing if you were thinking in those terms and you were pushing a particular set of ideas, what would be more useful to your cause than to say, look, we've been talking about this for all this time, and
Hmm.
now somebody has been shot for raising these questions by somebody in a relationship, etc., etc. Imagine in that situation to decide I'm actually going to push aside the facts, even though they could be useful to some of the arguments I make, because I would rather blame the Jews.
Yeah,
That.
but you know why? You know why? It works better. If
Hmm.
the numbers on the bottom of the thumbnail are not big enough to justify the profits you want and to keep you in the mix with the
Yeah.
names that are populating the trending hashtags, then you're not going to say it. And the Jews resonate with division. And the trans Don't. They are a beleaguered minority, and there are plenty of conversations to have around the process and the age and the acceptance and all of it. But all I know about the facts in this situation is that you had this POS that pulled the trigger, and it was the alleged trans person in those texts who was reasonably shocked by what he had done and why, and was questioning him about it. It was the non-trans in that equation that was the one who was acting crazy. But
Sure.
they do it because opportunistically, Doug. When I watched you, Douglas, with Rogan and Dave Smith, and most people won't know who that is, and maybe that's a good thing, but you know what you're talking about. You've covered the conflict. You understand the nuance. And literally, it was just listening to two people look at you and say, yeah, I don't see it that way. Nah, I don't like it. Yeah, and I'm a Jew, by the way. And yeah, I don't like it. And that is what is passing for a back and forth these days. And that's why I believe, Douglas, as we enter this next phase for the Jews. This is the new year and the 10 days of awe. And of course, our Christians will have their own calendar. It is a good time of the year to start thinking about what we're doing and what we're doing to ourselves.
I would agree.
And
Absolutely.
I'm very happy to have you as part of the conversation.
I just had
Go
one
ahead,
thing
Douglas. Make a last point for me.
Just forgiveness is an incredibly important thing, but as is the demand that people ask for forgiveness and want forgiveness. This is something that we are going to have to think about as well. Forgiving is one thing and a superhuman virtue, but it is also necessary for somebody who has done evil to seek forgiveness. And that is something we also need to see.
Nobody's going to see it as evil when it's advantage. And if it's getting them where they want to be and getting more of what is valued, the state of play stays how it is. I look forward to having many conversations with you, Douglas Murray, and I appreciate you for your work.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.